Imagine standing in a crowd of your own family, the people who should know you best, only to be reduced to a footnote in their story. That's where Nora Kade found herself on a blistering 4th of July evening in Texas, 2025. At 33, a major general in the U.S. Army, Nora had led missions that saved thousands, her name whispered in Pentagon halls as a strategic genius. Yet, at the Kade family ranch, surrounded by star-spangled banners and the smoky tang of barbecue, her father, Vernon Kade, stood up with a glass of bourbon and shattered her world. "To my son, Lieutenant Colonel Bryce Kade," he boomed, "the true heir of our family's honor." The crowd cheered, their Budweisers glinting under string lights. Then Vernon's eyes slid to Nora, cold as a winter ditch. "As for my daughter," he said, "her path is her own to bear." Laughter rippled through the guests, uncles, cousins, neighbors, each chuckle a splinter in Nora's chest. She stood there, in her faded flannel and dusty boots, smiling through the sting, her heart a clenched fist around a water bottle she didn't remember grabbing. But fate has a way of flipping the script. 10 seconds later, the outdoor TV, flickering with baseball highlights, cut to a CNN breaking news alert. Nora's face filled the screen, her Army combat uniform stark against the Pentagon seal. Major General Nora Kade, the anchor declared, the mastermind behind the global Operation Vanguard strike, thwarting a rogue AI network threatening millions. The yard went silent. Vernon's bourbon glass trembled, amber liquid catching the light. Bryce's smug grin froze. Nora's mother, Corinne, dropped her ladle mid-scoop, mashed potatoes splattering. No one clapped. No one spoke. Nora stood taller, her pulse roaring, but inside, she felt like she was falling from a cliff with no parachute. They saw her now, not as a daughter, but as a stranger who dared to outshine their chosen star. And in that silence, Nora knew, this wasn't just a slight. It was a declaration of war. Hey, if Nora's courage to stand tall despite betrayal hits you, smash that like button, drop a comment about a time you were overlooked, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe. We're just getting started with Nora's fight. The Texas air clung to Nora's skin like a second shirt as she navigated the crowd, her boots thudding on the grass. The ranch was a postcard of Americana, red checkered tablecloths, kids darting between hay bales, adults sipping beer like it was a Norman Rockwell painting. But beneath the surface, it was a battlefield. Bryce, in his tailored Air Force uniform, held court near the fire pit, spinning tales of classified briefings with senators. His laughter was too loud, his audience too eager. Nora caught her mother's eye across the buffet. "Hey, Mom," she called softly. Corinne's smile was tight, fleeting. "Hi, honey," she murmured, eyes already back on Bryce, piling ribs onto his plate like an offering. "Grab some cornbread before it's gone." The dismissal was so swift it left Nora blinking, her throat tight. She drifted to the edge of the lawn, where fireflies blinked in the dusk. The weight of Vernon's toast settled like dust in her lungs. She'd spent years proving herself, missions in hostile zones, sleepless nights crafting strategies, scars earned in silence. Yet here, she was invisible. The TV kept playing, now looping her name with words like hero and unprecedented. Guests glanced at her, then away, as if her success was an inconvenience. Her cousin, Tobin Wells, a West Point cadet, sidled up, his grin sharp. "Didn't expect that news, huh, Nora?" he said, voice dripping with something she couldn't quite place. Envy, maybe, or something darker. She nodded, her jaw tight, sensing a storm brewing beyond the horizon of this night. As the party hummed on, Nora's phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from an unknown number. "They're watching you, General. Be careful." Her pulse spiked. She scanned the crowd, smiling faces, clinking bottles, but no one met her eyes. The message was a spark, igniting a question. Who was they? Her family? Someone else? The answer lay somewhere in the shadows of the ranch, and Nora's gut told her this was only the beginning of a fight she hadn't chosen but wouldn't lose. The Texas night pressed heavy on Nora Kade as she slipped away from the barbecue's fading chatter, the sting of her father's toast still burning in her chest. The ranch house loomed dark, its windows like unblinking eyes. She needed answers, something to anchor the chaos of the evening. Guided by instinct, she climbed the creaking stairs to the attic, a place she hadn't ventured since childhood. The air up there was thick with dust and memory, the kind that clings to your throat. With a flashlight beam cutting through the shadows, Nora navigated past stacks of holiday decorations and her brother Bryce's gleaming high school trophies, each polished like a shrine. Then, in a dim corner behind a splintered rocking chair, she found it, a soggy cardboard box scrawled with Nora's things in Vernon's sharp, careless handwriting. Her heart sank, a stone in her chest, as she knelt and peeled back the brittle tape. Inside was a museum of her erased life. A marathon medal, its red-white-blue ribbon faded, tangled with a worn dog tag from her first deployment. A folded letter from her grandfather, Amos, a Vietnam vet, praising her acceptance into Ranger School, his words smudged by time. A cracked photo of Nora at Fort Benning, mud-streaked and grinning after airborne training, her eyes alight with pride. These weren't just objects. They were pieces of her soul, discarded like junk. By contrast, downstairs, Bryce's accolades lined the fireplace mantel, dusted daily, revered. The injustice twisted in her gut, sharp as a blade. She traced the edge of a bronze star, earned in a classified op she couldn't even discuss, and felt the weight of years spent proving herself to a family who saw her as an afterthought. As she sat back on her heels, the attic groaned under the summer heat. A faint noise, a creak from the stairs, made her freeze. Her flashlight swept the room, catching nothing but shadows. Yet the text from earlier, "They're watching you, General," echoed in her mind. Was someone here, now, lurking just beyond the beam? Her soldier's instincts kicked in, pulse steady, but senses sharp. She tucked the medal and letter into her jacket, leaving the box as she found it, careful not to disturb the dust. Downstairs, the party's music drifted up, Springsteen, probably Bryce's playlist, but it felt distant, like a world she no longer belonged to. As she descended, her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Check the barn. You're not the only one looking. Her breath caught. The barn? At midnight? The cryptic message was a hook, pulling her deeper into a game she didn't yet understand. Outside, the ranch was quiet, fireflies flickering like tiny beacons. Nora moved silently toward the barn, its silhouette looming against the starlit sky. The door was ajar, a faint glow spilling from within. Her hand rested on the knife clipped to her belt, a habit from years in combat zones. Inside, she found nothing but hay bales and rusted tools, until her flashlight caught a glint under a tarp. A small, locked box, unmarked, with a fresh scratch on the latch. Someone had been here recently. Her fingers hesitated, the air thick with the sense of being watched. Was this a trap or a clue? The anonymous texts, the attic's relics, the barn's mystery, they wove together, threads of a conspiracy tightening around her. Nora pocketed the key she found taped beneath the box, her mind racing. This wasn't just about her family's betrayal anymore. Someone, or something, was moving pieces on a board she couldn't yet see. She stepped back into the night, the barn door creaking shut behind her. The party's laughter had faded, replaced by the hum of cicadas. Nora's boots crunched on gravel as she headed toward the house, the weight of her discoveries heavy in her jacket. Whatever was coming, she'd face it head-on, like every mission before. But this time, the enemy wasn't across an ocean. It was closer, hidden in the shadows of her own bloodline. And as she glanced back at the barn, a silhouette flickered in the distance, too quick to be sure. Her grip tightened on the key. The fight for her truth had just begun, and someone was watching her every step. The Texas dawn broke slow and hazy, painting the Kade family ranch in shades of gold and regret. Nora Kade sat on the porch, her coffee gone cold, the mysterious key from the barn heavy in her pocket. The sting of last night's barbecue lingered, her father Vernon's toast to her brother Bryce, dismissing her as a burden, and the cryptic texts warning her she was being watched. But it was the attic's soggy box of her forgotten achievements that cut deepest, a reminder of a lifetime spent trying to earn a place in a family that never saw her. Nora's mind drifted to the years she'd poured herself into proving her worth, not just on battlefields but in quieter, more personal sacrifices. As a young captain at Fort Hood, she'd lived on instant noodles and stale bread, wiring chunks of her meager army paycheck back to this very ranch. She'd picture her parents fixing the sagging porch or buying groceries, her contributions a bridge to their approval. Instead, she learned the truth in a single phone call that shattered her illusions. It was a Sunday, years ago, when her mother, Corinne, called, voice bright as if delivering good news. "Nora, honey, thanks for the money," she'd said. Bryce looked sharp in that Tom Ford suit for his DC conference. "Those Capitol Hill mixers don't come cheap, you know." Nora's hands, folding laundry in her cramped barracks, froze. "You used my money for Bryce?" she asked, voice low. Corinne hesitated, then rushed on. "Well, he needed to make an impression. It's a big opportunity." Nora's heart thudded, the room tilting. She'd skipped leave, worn threadbare boots, rationed toothpaste to send that money home, believing it was for the family. Instead, it bought Bryce's polished image while she ate off cardboard. The betrayal wasn't loud. It was quiet, clinical, like a scalpel. She hung up, the silence heavier than any explosion she'd faced in combat. That moment marked a shift. Nora stopped sending money. No explanation, no fight. Weeks later, her father's voice crackled through the phone, sharp with accusation. "Since when did you get so selfish, Nora? Cutting off your own family?" She held the receiver, his words echoing the same entitlement she'd heard at the barbecue. "I'm just learning from you, sir," she replied, calm as ice, and hung up. It was her first boundary, a line drawn in the dirt of her loyalty. She started spending on herself, not extravagance, but dignity. A new coat, a weekend camping with squad mates, laughter over cheap beer by a fire. Each choice was a brick in a wall she built against their expectations. But the anonymous texts from last night, "They're watching you and check the barn," gnawed at her. Were they from Bryce, orchestrating another slight? Or something bigger? As she sipped her coffee, the ranch stirred awake. Corinne emerged, carrying a tray of biscuits, her smile as fleeting as ever. "Morning, honey," she said, eyes avoiding Nora's. "You sleep okay?" Nora nodded, her fingers brushing the key in her pocket. She wanted to ask about the barn, the locked box, but something held her back, a soldier's instinct that the game had changed. Her phone buzzed, another unknown number. "They know you found it. Stay sharp." Her pulse quickened. She scanned the horizon, where the barn stood silent, its door now locked tight. Had someone followed her last night? The silhouette she'd glimpsed in the dark felt less like a trick of the light now. Bryce's laughter drifted from the kitchen, casual, untouchable. Was he part of this, or just another pawn in a larger scheme? Nora stood, her boots scuffing the porch. She needed answers, but not here, not yet. The key, the texts, the attic's relics. They were pieces of a puzzle, and someone was playing a dangerous game. She slipped into the house, past Bryce's framed West Point photo, and grabbed her jacket. The locked box in the barn wasn't just a clue, it was a warning. As she stepped outside, a pickup truck rumbled down the drive, its driver obscured by dust. Nora's hand hovered near her knife, her senses alive. The truth was out there, buried deeper than her family's betrayal, and she'd dig it up, no matter who or what was watching. The Texas sun climbed high, baking the Kade family ranch in a relentless haze, but Nora Kade felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. The mysterious key from the barn weighed heavy in her pocket, its scratched surface a silent challenge. The cryptic text, "They know you found it. Stay sharp," looped in her mind, tying the attic's discarded relics of her achievements to a growing sense of danger. Her father's dismissal at the barbecue and her mother's indifference had cracked open old wounds, but the betrayal she uncovered now was sharper, more calculated. Nora stood by the ranch's fence line, her eyes scanning the horizon for the pickup truck she'd glimpsed earlier, its dust trail long gone. Her soldier's instinct screamed, This wasn't just family neglect anymore. Someone was rewriting her story, and they were playing for keeps. Days later, back in D.C., Nora sat in her Pentagon office, the hum of fluorescent lights barely drowning out the memory of Texas. She was still processing the barbecue's humiliation when her phone buzzed with a news alert. Flipping on the office TV, she froze. There, on MSNBC, was her cousin, Tobin Wells, a West Point cadet with a polished smile, sitting under bright studio lights. Operation Vanguard strike was a turning point, he said, voice heavy with rehearsed gravitas. I made the call to push forward, despite the risks. We lost good men, but we stopped a global threat. The screen flashed his name, Lieutenant Tobin Wells, hero of Vanguard strike. Nora's coffee cup trembled in her hand. That was her operation, her sleepless nights, her strategic map of rogue AI networks, her orders under fire. Tobin hadn't been within 1,000 miles of the mission. The betrayal hit like a shockwave. Tobin's story wasn't just stolen. It was word for word from her classified debriefs, down to the radio commands she'd barked in the field. The camera lingered on his West Point ring, his earnest nod, a single staged tear. The anchor praised his unwavering courage. Nora's pulse roared. She recognized the hand behind this, her brother, Bryce, a public affairs officer with a knack for spinning narratives. And there was another player, General Elton Marsh, a Pentagon heavyweight who'd never forgiven her for exposing flaws in his drone program. Her phone buzzed again, another anonymous text. They're building a myth. You're the cost. Her jaw tightened. This wasn't just theft, it was erasure. Nora stormed to her desk, pulling up encrypted mission logs. Every timestamp, every decision hers. She cross-referenced Tobin's TV script with her debriefs, finding exact matches. Bryce's fingerprints were all over it. He'd leaked her work to journalists, framing Tobin as the hero.
But why?
A memory flashed. Marsh, at a Pentagon briefing, glaring as she dismantled his faulty strategy. He'd lost contracts, clout, and a promotion. Now he was backing Tobin, a pawn in his revenge. Nora's phone buzzed again. Meet me. Midnight. Lincoln Memorial. Bring the key. The anonymous sender was escalating, pulling her deeper into their game. Was it a trap or an ally? She met Colonel Lila Hensley, her mentor, in the Pentagon's break room later that day. Lila's eyes were sharp behind her glasses. They're circling you, Nora, she said, sliding a coffee across the table. Marsh's allies, and Bryce is playing dirty. That key, what's it for? Nora hesitated, then showed her the scratched metal from the barn. Lila's brow furrowed. This smells like leverage. Someone's scared you're getting close. Nora nodded, her mind racing. The TV droned on, replaying Tobin's interview, his fake tear now a taunt. She wasn't just fighting for credit, she was fighting to exist. That night, Nora stood in the shadow of the Lincoln Memorial, the key cold in her palm. The air was thick, DC's humidity pressing against her skin. Footsteps echoed behind her, too deliberate to be a tourist. She turned, hand on her knife, but saw only darkness. A folded note lay on the ground, weighted by a stone. They'll bury you next. Check Marsh's emails. Her heart pounded. The conspiracy was bigger than her family, bigger than Tobin's lie. Someone was pulling strings, and Nora was closing in on their shadow. She pocketed the note, the key her only clue, and stepped into the night, ready to unravel the truth, or be consumed by it. The DC sky hung low and gray, a fitting shroud for the storm brewing in Nora Kade's life. She stood in her Pentagon office, the air thick with the hum of servers and the weight of betrayal. The stolen glory of Operation Vanguard strike, her cousin Tobin Wells claiming her victory on national TV, still burned, but the anonymous note from the Lincoln Memorial, they'll bury you next. Check Marsh's emails, had raised the stakes. Nora's fingers hovered over her keyboard, her mind racing through the threads of a conspiracy that now felt like a noose. Her brother Bryce's media manipulation and General Elton Marsh's vendetta were no longer just personal slights, they were a calculated attack. And then, at 0700 sharp, an email landed like a grenade. Suspension pending security review. priority. The sender was the Office of Army Personnel Command, the charge a fabricated breach of classified drone reconnaissance data. Nora's breath caught. 15 years in uniform, not a single blemish, and now this on the anniversary of her enlistment, no less. Precision, not coincidence. The PDF attachment was cold, clinical, breach of Category 1 security protocol. The signature, MJR Echo, was a ghost alias, but Nora knew its source, General Elton Marsh. She'd humiliated him years ago by exposing a flaw in his drone command model, costing him millions in contracts, and a star on his shoulder. Now, he was striking back, using her own family as pawns. The anonymous texts, the key from the barn, Tobin's televised lie, it all pointed to Marsh orchestrating her erasure. Her phone buzzed, another unknown number. They're moving fast. You're not safe. Her pulse spiked. Was this Cypher, the hacker who'd hinted at help? Or someone closer, watching from the shadows? Nora met Colonel Lila Hensley in a dimly lit Pentagon hallway, away from prying eyes. Lila slid a USB drive across a table, her voice low. Logs from Marsh's private server. Risky, but I pulled favors. Nora nodded, her trust in Lila a rare anchor. Back in her office, she plugged in the drive, her screen lighting up with encrypted emails. One thread, between Marsh and an alias tied to Bryce, discussed reassigning credit for Vanguard's strike. Another mentioned disciplinary measures to neutralize Nora's influence. Her stomach churned. This wasn't just revenge. It was a surgical strike to discredit her legacy. The key from the barn, still in her pocket, felt heavier. Was it tied to Marsh's files? A lockbox of secrets he didn't want her to find? She reached out to Cypher, a hacker known only by reputation, through a secure line. I need you to trace MJR Echo, she said, voice steady despite the storm inside. Cypher's reply was a low chuckle. Already on it, General. They're sloppy. Left a trail in Arlington. By nightfall, Cypher sent a hit, a Pentagon IP address, Marsh's office, no proxy. Arrogant, careless. But another text followed. They know you're digging. Watch your six. Nora's eyes flicked to her office window, the DC skyline a blur of lights. Was someone out there, tracking her? The silhouette from the Texas barn flashed in her mind, a ghost she couldn't shake. She moved her work to a safe house in Arlington, a bare-bones apartment with blackout curtains and a single laptop. Cypher's data revealed more. Marsh had promised Tobin a fast-tracked promotion for his TV stunt, with Bryce scripting the narrative. Her father, Vernon, had provided context on Nora's instability to justify the suspension. Her own family, weaponizing her scars. Nora's hands clenched, but she didn't break. She thought of Lila's words. This is war, Nora. Get loud. She began compiling evidence, mission logs, audio of her Vanguard strike commands, emails tying Marsh to the lie. Each piece was a bullet in her arsenal. As she worked, a knock at the safe house door made her freeze. No one knew she was here. Her knife was in her hand before she reached the peephole. Empty hallway, but a folded note slid under the door. They're closer than you think. Check the key. Her heart pounded. The barn's key, the conspiracy, the suspension, they were converging, and someone was steps ahead, watching, waiting. Nora gripped the key, its edges biting into her palm. She wasn't just fighting for her name anymore. She was fighting to survive a machine that wanted her erased. The Capitol Hill hearing room buzzed with tension, a pressure cooker of C-SPAN cameras and murmuring spectators. Nora Kade, in her crisp ceremonial blues, stood at the center of it all, her heart a steady drumbeat despite the storm raging inside. The betrayal of her cousin Tobin Wells, who'd stolen credit for her Operation Vanguard strike on national TV, and the fabricated suspension orchestrated by General Elton Marsh, had pushed her to this moment. Her brother Bryce's media manipulation and her father Vernon's complicity had carved wounds deeper than any battlefield scar. Armed with evidence, mission logs, emails, and anonymous tips from the shadowy Cypher, Nora was ready to dismantle their lies. But the notes slipped into her coat pocket last night. They're closer than you think. Check the key, lingered like a warning shot. Someone was still watching, and this hearing was her chance to strike back or be buried. The room fell silent as the senator from Virginia, a grizzled veteran with a voice like gravel, leaned into the mic. Major General Nora Kade, you've requested this platform to address serious allegations. Proceed. Nora adjusted her stance, her eyes scanning the front row where Marsh sat, his medals gleaming like armor. Bryce, polished in his Air Force uniform, stared ahead, unreadable. Tobin fidgeted, his West Point poise cracking. She nodded to a staffer, and the screen behind her lit up. For 15 years, Nora began, her voice clear and unyielding, I served in silence, leading missions that saved lives, never asking for glory. But truth became inconvenient. She clicked the remote, and Tobin's MSNBC interview played, his scripted tale of Vanguard strike, every word lifted from her debriefs. The room stirred as she switched to mission audio, her voice steady under gunfire, ordering airstrikes, saving lives. Lieutenant Wells was never there, she said, her gaze locking on Tobin. His hands twitched, eyes darting to Marsh. He was bribed with a promotion. Another slide, emails between Marsh and Tobin, promising a military intelligence slot for his public cooperation. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Nora pressed on, her voice ablaze. Lieutenant Colonel Bryce Kade, my brother, orchestrated the narrative. Metadata flashed. Bryce's off-the-books meetings with journalists, pre-written quotes burying Nora's role. His face remained stone, but his knuckles whitened. Then came the final blow. This email, Nora said, is from my father, Vernon Kade, to General Marsh. The screen showed Vernon's unencrypted words. Nora displays volatility, resists authority, prone to insubordination. The room froze. He didn't defend me, she said, her voice steady but raw. He armed my enemies to protect a legacy that excluded me. The senators leaned forward, the air thick with disbelief. This wasn't oversight, Nora continued. It was a calculated assassination of my character, designed to erase me from my own story. She stepped back, her evidence a smoldering ruin of their lies. Marsh's jaw clenched. Tobin looked at the floor. Bryce's eyes flickered with something like fear. The chairman cleared his throat. These are grave accusations, General Kade. We'll enter executive review. Nora nodded, her spine straight, but as she turned to leave, her fingers brushed the key in her pocket, the one from the Texas barn, still unopened, its purpose a mystery. The anonymous note's warning echoed. They're closer than you think. As she walked through the center doors, a staffer slipped her a folded paper unmarked. Her pulse spiked. She unfolded it in the hallway. They're not done. The key unlocks more than you know. Her eyes darted to the crowd, reporters, aides, spectators, but no one met her gaze. The conspiracy wasn't over. It was evolving, and someone was still pulling strings. Outside, the Capitol's shadows stretched long, and Nora's boots echoed on the marble steps. The hearing had cracked open the truth, but the key and the notes hinted at a deeper game, one that could still destroy her. She clutched the evidence folder, her mind already mapping the next move. Marsh, Bryce, Tobin, they'd underestimated her, but someone else was watching, waiting for her to falter. Nora's fight wasn't just for her name anymore. It was for survival in a war where truth was the ultimate weapon and the battlefield was far from won. The Texas sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the Guadalupe River, where Nora Kade sat on a weathered bench, the air heavy with the scent of damp earth and cedar. The Capitol Hill hearing was still raw, its echoes ringing in her ears, her testimony exposing General Alton Marsh, her brother Bryce, and her cousin Tobin Wells for their orchestrated betrayal. She'd laid bare their lies with mission logs, emails, and her father Vernon's damning words, leaving their reputations in ruins. But the mysterious key from the barn, still unopened in her pocket, and the cryptic note from the hearing, they're not done. The key unlocks more than you know, kept her on edge. Someone was still out there, watching, plotting. The fight wasn't over, and this quiet riverside meeting with her father was no peace talk. It was a reckoning. Vernon Kade arrived late, his once commanding frame stooped, his eyes avoiding hers. He sat beside her, hands clasped tight, the bourbon swagger of the barbecue replaced by a weary slump. "Nora," he said, voice low, like he was testing the word. She didn't stand, didn't soften. "Mr. Kade," she replied, her tone flat, a soldier addressing a stranger. He flinched, then tried again. "I wanted to apologize," he muttered, no conviction in his words. "For what?" Nora asked, her gaze fixed on the river's slow current. "For everything, I suppose," he said, vague as a politician. "I thought I was protecting the family name." Nora's laugh was sharp, cutting through the humid air. "Protecting it? By erasing me? By handing Marsh a profile to call me unstable?" Vernon's hands tightened, knuckles white. "It wasn't like that," he started, but Nora cut him off. "You chose Bryce's spotlight over my truth. You let Tobin steal my work, let Marsh suspend me. All for your precious legacy." Her voice stayed steady, but each word was a stone dropped into the silence between them. She pulled the barn key from her pocket, its scratched surface glinting in the fading light, and set it on the bench. "This is for the ranch," she said. "I won't be back." Vernon stared at the key, his face crumpling, but he didn't reach for it. "I'm still your father," he tried, softer now, the old paternal charm that once worked on a younger Nora. She shook her head. "You stopped being my father when you traded my scars for dinner invitations." She stood, the river's breeze catching her jacket, urging her forward. "This is the last time we speak, Mr. Kade," she said, turning away. Her boots crunched on the gravel path, each step a release from a lifetime of chasing his approval. But as she walked, her phone buzzed, a new text from an unknown number. "You're cutting ties, but they're tying knots. The key's lock is in D.C." Nora froze, her hand instinctively gripping the knife at her belt. The silhouette from the Texas barn, the notes, the texts, they weren't random. Someone was orchestrating a larger game, and the key was the next move. She glanced back at Vernon, still staring at the bench, oblivious or complicit. Was he part of this, or just another pawn? The river flowed on, indifferent to her turmoil. Nora's mind raced, Cypher's data, Lila's warnings, the locked box she hadn't yet opened. The hearing had exposed her enemies, but this new message suggested a deeper network, one that stretched beyond her family, beyond Marsh. She slipped the key back into her pocket, its weight a reminder of unanswered questions. As she reached her truck, a black SUV idled in the distance, too far to see the driver, too close for comfort. Her pulse quickened. The conspiracy wasn't just about erasing her past, it was about controlling her future. Nora drove off, the Texas dusk swallowing the river behind her, but the fight was far from over. She'd severed ties with her blood, but the real enemy was still out there, and they were waiting for her to unlock their secrets, or fall into their trap. The Texas skies stretched wide and cloudless over Jefferson County, where Nora Kade stood on a patch of land she claimed as her own, a modest sprawl of oak trees and open fields, far from the Kade family ranch and its ghosts. The Capitol Hill hearing had left her brother Bryce reassigned to a remote base, her cousin Tobin expelled from West Point, and General Elton Marsh retired in disgrace. Nora's testimony, backed by Cypher's hacked emails and Colonel Lila Hensley's logs, had burned their lies to ash. Yet the key from the barn, still unopened, and the cryptic text, "The key's lock is in D.C.," kept her vigilant. Someone was still out there, a shadow pulling strings, and Nora wasn't done fighting. Here, on this land, she was building something new, the Kade Academy for Ethical Leadership, a sanctuary for soldiers and civilians to learn what honor really meant. The name Kade wasn't pride, it was reclamation, a defiance of her father Vernon's legacy of silence. The Academy's first building was still raw, its wooden beams smelling of fresh-cut pine. Nora walked its halls, her boots echoing on concrete floors, passing cadets hunched over coffee and notes on ethics in combat. She'd turned down a White House promotion, choosing instead to create a place where truth could breathe, where young officers learned to lead with integrity, not ambition. One spring afternoon, as she knelt in the Academy's memorial garden, pulling weeds from soil still damp with morning dew, a familiar figure appeared on the gravel path. Her mother, Corinne, stood hesitant, her brown boots scuffing the dirt. No words passed at first. Corinne crouched beside Nora, picking up a trowel, and they worked in silence, the kind that held space for something new. When the last weed was gone, Corinne reached into her coat and pressed a small object into Nora's palm, a marathon medal, polished smooth, the one Nora thought had been lost in the attic's forgotten box. "I'm sorry," Corinne whispered, her voice breaking. "I wasn't brave enough." Nora's fingers closed around the medal, its weight a quiet anchor. She didn't forgive, not fully, but she nodded, letting go of the pain she'd carried too long. The moment was fragile, a step toward healing, but not an ending. As Corinne walked away, Nora's phone buzzed, a final text from Cypher. "The lock's at the Pentagon. Marsh left a file. Find it before they do." Her pulse quickened. The key, the conspiracy. It wasn't over. The Academy was her foundation, but the fight was still alive. That evening, Nora stood at the back of the Academy's main hall, watching cadets laugh and debate over notes. The whiteboard held her last lecture's words. "Honor is not inherited. It is built." A young cadet, Ortiz, lingered after class, her eyes sharp. "How do you know when to stop fighting, ma'am?" she asked. Nora thought of Vernon's betrayal, Bryce's schemes, the key's unanswered lock. "When the fight costs more than your truth," she said. Ortiz nodded, understanding without writing it down. Nora's Academy wasn't just a school. It was a promise to those who'd been erased, a place where scars became strength. As night fell, Nora walked the land's perimeter, the stars bright above Missouri. The key sat heavy in her pocket, a reminder of a battle yet to come. Cypher's warnings suggested Marsh's file held secrets that could unravel more than her family's lies, a network of corruption, perhaps still lurking in DC's shadows. Nora wasn't chasing vengeance. She was chasing clarity. The Academy's lights glowed behind her, a beacon for those who'd choose honor over applause. She'd built something honest, but the key's lock loomed, a final challenge. Someone was still watching, and Nora was ready, not just to survive, but to strike. Nora Kade's story isn't just a tale of betrayal. It's a testament to what rises from the ashes when truth becomes your compass. She turned a lifetime of being unseen into a legacy that lights the way for others. The Kade Academy stands as her answer to a world that tried to silence her, a place where honor is built, not borrowed. Under Missouri's endless stars, Nora found peace, not in applause or medals, but in the quiet rhythm of rebuilding, teaching cadets to carry their scars with pride, to lead with courage, to choose truth when silence is easier. Her mother's returned medal was a small bridge, not to the past, but to a future where healing could begin. Yet the key in her pocket, its lock still hidden in DC, whispers of battles ahead. Nora's not done. She's just begun planting something that will outlast her, a legacy of resilience for anyone who's ever been told they're not enough. If Nora's journey moved you, hit that subscribe button to join us for more stories of courage and truth. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it and drop a comment. What's the legacy you're building? Like, share, and let's keep this conversation alive. Stay strong, stay true, and we'll see you in the next one.